Hi, everyone. This is GalswithLEI Carmona, the Executive Director of Women's March, coming to you from very sunny and very hot Amarillo, Texas, unfortunately. I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you today, but I am very happy that I was able to send this video. One of the silver linings of the last few years is that we've gotten so much better with tech on these things, and so I'm glad I was able to come and offer some thoughts towards this conversation that's so important that is happening today. I wanted to talk for a few minutes about a couple of things, just kind of where we are in the moment around advocating and organizing for gender justice, gender equality, what it's like living in this political moment as it pertains to Roe versus Wade and other Supreme Court decisions, and then just what it's like to build a grassroots movement. So I'm just going to dive in. And if there are any follow-up questions or folks want to figure out how to get involved, womensmarch.com is the best way to do that, to both reach me and to figure out how to get in where you fit in. So the first thing that I would say is that, we are in a new era of American politics. The gutting of Roe versus Wade marks the first time that a constitutional right is rolled back in the way that it was by an unelected Supreme Court, with at least two justices who were, I think it might be more like three, who were nominated and confirmed by a president who was not elected by the general population, who lost the popular vote, and of course by the Senate that was a part of those same types of gerrymandered victories that make electoral college the deciding factor, which is very much not the will of the people. And I think that that's the real deciding factor inside of what we're sitting with in this political moment, is an attack on the will of the people, whether that looks like an attack on women's bodies, women as a political class, or whether that looks like an attack on trans folks, or whether that looks like an attack on communities of color and voting rights. It's impossible to separate the three. The overlap is heavy between them, but also it's important to understand that all of this is an attack on democracy by some folks who can't win fair and square, cannot win at the ballot box anymore, and so they have to win by picking who votes. They have to win by putting barriers up to folks who vote, including economic barriers, including very real barriers to, women and other folks' ability to get out and make a difference and actually move an agenda that works for us. And so I think that to understand anything about gender justice in this moment, you have to understand that and understand that, a lot of groups, particularly Women's March that was formed the march started and was organized in 2016. The organization was formed in 2017. It's a very young organization. If this were a business, it would be called a startup. And to understand that a lot of organizations really have to answer the question over and over again, what is the work? What is the work in front of us? And, after the 2020 elections that were such an astounding victory in so many ways for women and for Democrats, there was a question in front of Women's March of, is there still a role here? And what we have seen is that the fight for gender justice, the fight for bodily autonomy, the fight for personal freedoms to be able to, choose when and how to have a family is more important and more critical than ever. We also see, last night, we saw an incredible turnout in the state of Kansas, where women and folks across the aisle actually rejected the amendment, and have protected abortion rights inside of that state. So we realize that inside of Roe versus Wade, inside of this political moment, there actually are bipartisan issues, and there are ways that we can build a bigger we, the biggest constituent we possible to really address the threat, which is the rise of fascism and autocracy, from a party that has embraced that because they can't win any other way anymore. The math just isn't math for them. And so as we, are thinking about that and look, in history, we are not the first country to ever deal with anything, issues like this. And what we do know very clearly is that the only way to defeat millionaires and billionaires, oligarchs, folks who are trying to take power away from people, is with the power of people, is with mass movement. And so what Women's March and other organizations like ours in the gender justice space, in the racial justice space, environmental justice space, LGBTQ justice space, in progressive movement all over, is to try to build a mass movement that is multiracial, that sprawls across place and class, where everyone has a role to play and everyone fits in. And everyone is impacted, of course, by the oppressions that we face in very different ways, but that does not matter about the contribution. Everyone still has a contribution to make, and we want to make space and make a place for everyone to make that contribution. And so I think that the political moment that we're in is dire. I think that it requires all of us to, really consider what our best and highest contributions are, and to make them in this moment. And I would say it doesn't have to be Women's March. It doesn't have to be a gender justice organization, but find a political home and find a place to build power with other people. This isn't a fight that we can win individually. What matters here is our ability to regain our skills around organizing, our values around interdependence, around community, and to better understand how we can together move the levers of power all across our country, which isn't just governmental. It's not just organizational. Women's March is not an organization that says just go vote. We're also saying build power with your neighbors in your communities and make change where you live. Make change in your home. Make change in your community. Make change in the way that we talk about things and the way that we begin to think about things because of how we talk about things. There are a couple of things that are really on our side. And one is that there's just more of us than there are of them. There are more people who want to see a feminist future and who want a return to a progressive America and not an America that looks back in fear and hatred. Our opposition is never getting the culture back. We own that. We own pop culture. And so figuring out new and innovative ways to leverage that is very important for our movement. And finally, technology is helping us all. And so as much as folks want to take away our autonomy, take away our personal choice when and how to have a family, technology, including medical abortion pills, is really going to be an impediment to doing that. And so while we do have a lot of obstacles, we also have a lot of strengths and a lot of opportunities. And I am so sorry I'm not there to dig into that a little bit more, but absolutely happy to come on a Zoom or have another conversation with folks around a deep dive around what that looks like. Thank you so much for having me today, and have a great conversation.
Our next panelist is Anna Chua, Red Hill organizer, Sarah Knappholder.
My name is Anna. I'm the Red Hill organizer. Recently, the stereotypes in the water sectors. It's great to be here with you all today. Just a brief background: I'm Sandra here on Oahu. I currently live in Kabuki and I was born and raised in Malaysia. And also wanted to give everyone a really quick place-based context as well, because I think it's really important. The place we're talking about today is Kapukaki, also commonly known as Red Hill. It is located in the Hakupa'a of Honolua, and it's in the moku of Kona, and on the island of Oahu on illegally occupied Kanakawali land. So, just really briefly, how many of you have heard about the Red Hill water crisis here on Oahu? Good to know. Yeah, so I don't need to give too much context, I'm sure, but as you all know, today, as we speak, our sole source aquifer here in Oahu is still threatened by the U.S. Navy's Red Hill facility due to the leak last year. Families are still experiencing health impacts and seeing oil shoots in their water. And just 2 hours ago, the Board of Water Supply released a press statement suspecting that the plume is moving because they detected petroleum contamination in their groundwater monitoring well. So what this all means is that, as we speak, Oahu is facing an existential threat to our water, and for the indefinite future, we'll probably be dealing with this seeing as we are living on an island with precious, limited freshwater resources. So, I kind of want to speak more to the grassroots organizing work that I've been doing for the past year, and I'll speak mostly about water sectors and Shutdown Red Hill Coalition, as those are spaces that I've been primarily organizing in. And these two organizations / coalitions were born out of the need for us to come together to build a base. And as I'm sure you all know, building a base is key to winning any struggle, any fight. And so it's just been really important for us to use community organizing and coalition building as tools to do that. And so specifically speaking to the Shutdown Red Hill Coalition, it was a very, very organic kind of formation of organizations and individuals who have just been talking about Red Hill for a very long time, almost a decade. And when all this happened last year, we were all like, okay, we gotta do something. We have to stand with a more unified voice. And so we had our first official public launch late last year. We staged a tie-in at the Hawaii State Capitol to call for the shutdown of the Brainless facility, and we coupled that with a press conference. I'll have some pictures later, but that was deeply emotional and but just eye-opening to see how many folks were willing to come out to protect our water. And so currently, there are about 60 organizations involved, and it kind of involves a bunch of communities and sectors all across the world. All that to say, the movement is extremely interconnected. Most of us who are part of one work are part of the other, and so there's Hanahan coalitions, the Native Hawaiian German coalition, Brainless Pledge, and the Trade Collective, all of which are working different mediums to shut down Red Hill, to protect our water, to protect the families who have been impacted. And so we all are I think of it as kind of like we're tentacles and octopus. We have a very unifying goal, which is to shut down Red Hill, but we have a lot of different approaches and tactics. So there's been a lot happening on the ground. We have direct action, mutual aid, canvassing, door knocking, of course, legislative advocacy, neighborhood boards, and there's so many pockets, as Rachel said, to win these fights, right? And so just emphasizing that there's so many different skills and there's so many different ways that people have kind of plugged into this. And in terms of media and community engagement, this is a very complex thing, as I'm sure you all know, but I've kind of just simplified through different ways that we've really brought this to the surface level attention. So a really important thing has been framing, making sure you can distinguish between the target and the opponent. So in this case, our opponent is the US Navy, but we also sometimes target health, our protection agency, and so on and so forth. But making that distinction is extremely important in our message. And of course, in our messaging, we're also very clear about our demands. We want Red Hill shut down by when. We want reparations for the families who have been impacted, and all these things. We've just been very deliberate about the words that we choose. And of course, coupling press and action, as you'll see, that's a picture of our tie-in. We just saw how effective it was really to have obviously a press conference to share these are our demands, but we're also going to come together and for an action to show or to symbolize really how grave this catastrophe is. Personal stories have also been really, really huge, like highlighting these families who've been impacted, what they're still going through today has been the biggest impact in media. Even when we go to door knocking, and we say, hey, this is a family member who's been impacted, just had your door, this is her story, are you ready to be mobilized and take action? That's been the biggest difference we've seen, pre this water crisis. And of course, importantly, coming back to the roots, listening to economic leadership, really organizing, the work of protecting land and water is nothing new. And so really just kind of going back to indigenous knowledge. And of course, last but not least, none of the work that we've done is possible without people power. The Navy has conceded and shut down Red Hill, but we're not there yet. We will get there very soon, but we're not there yet. Community support mobilization has been a big win for us as well. And of course, broadening the conversation to long-term goals, right? None of this would have happened if had the expansion of militarism and tourism not occurred. And we can go back, it's a whole other conversation, but we've been very deliberate in our messaging to the media and to the community that this is a long-term struggle, even beyond Red Hill. So, mahalo everyone, and you can stay plugged in with all of these.
Hanahan Ferris, President and CEO, the Gathering for Justice and National Co-Chair, Women's March in Washington, 2017.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carmen Perez Jordan. I am the president and CEO of the Gathering for Justice and co-founder of an initiative called Poderistas that works with Latina women, as well as one of the national co-chairs of the 2017 Women's March on Washington and the co-founder of Women's March Inc. I am proud to share today that I've been organizing for almost 3 decades. That's a long time. And I'm connected to the lineage of organizers from the civil rights, Chicano, the American Indian, and Black liberation movement. I began my career in Santa Cruz County while attending the University of California, Santa Cruz, working on providing alternatives to incarceration to young people, as well as gender-responsive programming for young women. While in Santa Cruz, I was exposed to different ideologies, including feminist theory, servant leadership, and Kenyan nonviolence, which have actually been the foundation to all of my organizing. Under the mentorship of Nana Alejandres, the founder of Barrios Unidos, I began leading cultural and spiritual programming inside the prisons of California, and ultimately went into the prisons of El Salvador to supporting peace truce between MS-13 and 15th Street gang leaders. Through my relationship with Mr. Nane, as I call him, and my community work, I met my now boss and mentor, Mr. Harry Belafonte. I'm not sure if any of you know him, but he was the famous Calypso singer. He founded the Gathering for Justice in 2005 after he witnessed a 5-year-old girl by the name of Jaisha Scott being handcuffed for being enrolled in her classroom. Over the last 3 decades, I've been blessed to be able to work from Santa Cruz to New York City, to Stockton, back to my hometown of Oxnard, which was very difficult to go back to, as well as the national and international stage. One through line of this has been being grounded in the ideology of Dr. King, which is Kenyan nonviolence. And so if we could do the next. This is a slide. And so the principles are outlined by Dr. Martin Luther King in his famous essay, Pilgrimage to Nonviolence. These principles have been codified into practice by Dr. King's colleague, Dr. Bernard Lafayette. The 6 principles serve as a foundation of the teachings of Kenyan nonviolence, conflict resolution, and are often referred to as a will for nonviolence. One of the things that we were able to do, and so if you look at the ideology, I do training across the country, and if anybody comes out to a direct action, we hook them with the rapid response. People want to show up to protest, people want to show up to activations. But what I do is I then bring them into the organization and begin to train them and ground them in this ideology. And if you look at principle number 3, it says attack forces of evil, not people doing evil. And so all the work that I've done is not about attacking individuals. So in my police accountability work, you will never find me saying F the police. Or when we were organizing the Women's March and we were brought in to clean up the mess of the white ladies, we actually grounded the Women's March in Kenyan nonviolence. And so it wasn't about Trump for us. It was about creating entry points so that women like you could feel connected to a larger purpose and mission. And we created the unity principles. And so for us, it's not attacking the individual because you remove the individual and the system is still the same. And so as a Chicana feminist, race and gender are not separate for me. And everything that I do has a gender lens and a racial justice lens, and there's no separating that. As a young person in Oxnard, California, I grew up in a multiracial, multi-ethnic, and low-income community. I witnessed police violence against my brothers, as well as violence against girls and women in my community and in my home. Losing my sister around the age of 17 activated me to put me on a path to do this work. She was actually buried on my 17th birthday. The revolution initially started internally, and clearly it's now external. During my time in Santa Cruz, I created and provided gender-responsive programming through a menu of supportive services for young women and facilitated girls' circles. I coached varsity high school girls and came to understand the different needs that teenage girls have, especially young women of color. The brunt of this work lands on women of color, especially who are directly impacted by the policies that clearly affect our communities. And so For instance, there have been a 400% increase in the number of girls and women entering our carceral state. One of the women whose story made the biggest impact on me was Melissa Lucio, who was about to be executed a couple of months ago. And so one of the things that I did is I was able to build coalitions and bring her to the table. And because of the work that I was able to do along with other people, we were able to give her a fair chance at trial. And so we used influencers, community organizers, activists to come together like Voltron and really make an impact. And so I want to leave you with a couple of practices, which are the 10, what I call the 10 organizing commandments. One of the things that we do in our organizing is we have to ground ourselves in an ideology bigger than us. For example, servant leadership, Kenyan nonviolence, or Gandhiism. Also, suspend your first judgment and gather more information. How many times do you go into a place and you think you know people by the way they look, and in actuality you have more in common with them than what you didn't? So center people directly impacted by the issue, meet people where they're at and champion their cause. Not everybody's going to have the same information as you. Understand there's a lane for everyone. Whatever gift you have, bring that to the movement. Touch people 3 times, facilitate excellence, high impact, low ego, keep your eyes on the prize, and organize, organize, organize. Thank you.
Sorry for that.
I'm going to the step first. Okay.
Okay, our next panelist is Yan. She's co-founder and CEO by Holding Think by June.
Okay. My name is Zhu Yan, and I go by Dora, and I'm from Taichung, Taiwan, and I'm the co-founder and the CEO of YC Holdings. Our company is kind of help the government and companies to reduce their GHG emissions, carbon emissions. And back then, about like 18 years ago, I've been in this industry. At that time, there's not so many women into this field, but I found out myself very interested in this field. So I started my journey. Okay, again you can see there's a glacier lost. Probably all saw these pictures a lot of time, but you do feel, right? You just say, oh, okay, there's one over there somewhere. Okay, but we don't feel anything about it. But when it comes here, you see the flood. It's coming not in my country. I believe there's a lot everywhere, including the forest fire, right? So it's these extreme weathers impact our lives. So then, what I do here, because we are a consulting firm at the beginning, so I help the government like maybe 16 years ago, because the climate change at that time wasn't not familiar with it. Nobody knows. Maybe not nobody, but seldom. Several people know that this is an issue. So we need to do the research at the beginning for the government, but government won't move. They just want to do research, okay? Do nothing, okay? Then next step, or they probably think, oh, probably we need to do something about it. So we help them to build up their regulations related to the climate change issues. We have not just the Environmental Protection Agency, but also civil aviation association. And also we help the government, not central government, but also the local governments to set up the regulations. Okay, the second step is set up the regulations. But just for the least step on that, just do the inventory for GHG emissions at the beginning. And then it lasts more than 10 years, do nothing at all. Okay? So you maybe ask why, how I survive, right? Yeah, it takes a lot of ingredient to do that. And then, okay, finally, last year, something come up, and because of the Paris Agreement, as you know, okay, people are more aware of this subject. So we have the policies. Now, then the government asks, okay, what can we do for the industries? Okay, because as you know, Taiwan is a small island, and most of our companies are small, medium companies. And we, I guess it's almost like 80% of the companies, they export goods to other countries. And because right now it's as a European countries, they have a regulation to regulate the companies who want to export the goods into UN. You need to pay the carbon price, which is carbon tax. So that time, our government got nervous. Not from the EPA. EPA, no, nothing, do nothing. But from the economic ministry, yeah, they get nervous. So there's more and more the policies or substitutes to do. We help them to bridge the gap. Yeah, it's quite a hard time. I remember when I come out a draft of the plan, the program, and I take the right program to a government. I say, okay, this is very good. And he said, oh no, you give me 5 programs. I need to look at it. Then, okay, and then the other day I come out with 5 different kind of alternative programs for them. Then they choose the 6th. They may ask, what is the 6th? There is no 6th, right? But, okay, that's the way I learned. For after a long time, I've been practicing this. Okay, he said, okay, sorry. Oh, 1 minute left. Okay, I gotta do it quick. Okay, and he said, okay, you do your job. You are my consultant, so you give me the programs, but I choose what I want. So see how difficult it is, right? Okay, and then I also feel like it's been very interesting, and if you really can do something, make it work. I feel powerful, and I do help people to do that. So it made me, I want to do this job forever until I die. Really, I'll never quit. I'm telling you. Okay, thank you very much.
Stop the feminists. Okay, thank you all, and thank you all for interesting presentations, and now let's move to the Q&A session. Does anyone have a question?
So thank you all panelists for great presentation and inspiring us, and you guys are doing grassroots organizing and community leading and passionately doing something for all your life, which is great.
Yes.
So when you were working for other people in a way, because it's really not for your personal benefit but for the community, what thing is like a win moment for you guys? What inspires you to do the next step? Because it's, you know, it's tiring sometimes. You're working for somebody for their benefit, but what little wins do you get inspired and things like that? Maybe we'll start with Anna.
It's a really great question. It's like I'm sure we're also burn out at this point. So I think one example I can give is like when I first joined the Sierra Club, I was connected to a community member who's been involved in Red Hills since 2014. She's attended every community meeting, like she's there. When I first was talking to her, you know, a lot of her analysis of the situation was pretty general, right? Like she's very involved, very non-legal, but her solutions were like, okay, we gotta, you know, talk to the legislator, and then we got to, you know, make this bill, pass this bill so that this can happen, this can happen. And now, like 7 months later, after all this organizing, you know, she's coming out and saying, you know, this is systemic, this is a pattern, right? How can we change things on like that kind of level? How can we fight for systemic change? And I think just seeing ideological shifts like that, when it's even just 1%, really kind of like shook me a little bit, because I didn't realize like that is kind of the power of organizing. Like yes, the systemic things are what's ground us, and it grounds us, it pushes us forward, it gives us goals, but all these kind of building blocks is really what makes those things happen. So I'd say those things like keep going to wins. Is that question?
So when you live in your purpose, you know, and I truly feel like I live in my purpose every single day that I wake up, even though I'm having to deal with victims of police violence or victims of people who are incarcerated, and then you have your own life, and there's things going on there, and clearly what happened to myself and a woman named Tamika Linda on an international level, just being thrown away for something we didn't do. I feel that it is my responsibility to do this work, if not even who, and if not now, then when. And I also, the moment for me that made it all worth it, because the 3 decades were not glamorous. Working inside prisons, and sleeping on floors, and sleeping on benches, and then organizing the largest single-day protest in the history of the world. It really took everything from us. But I remember, well, it's so funny. I remember walking into Target, and it said the future is female. And I'm walking in there with my 1 and my 3-year-old little boy and my husband, and I said, we did that. I did that. We were able to shift culture and allow women to feel empowered and to know that women had a voice, and every little girl was going to see themselves in leadership and know one day that they could change the world.
For my personal experience, when I got frustrated to negotiate with the government, then I thought, I'm not doing the things for him or her. I'm doing for the people. So I keep, you know, sometimes it really kill me. Yeah, I just had to put myself up and to think, what's I'm gonna do the next step, and they come out some probably do something or maybe internet. You know, under the table, not really under the table the things, but I just try different ways. Yeah, I want to make it come true. Okay. Yes, thank you.
Sure. I was wondering, so in various different ways, you each have worked either with or against government. And I'm just wondering, from you, Carmen, are there ways, like best practices in which to engage government so that it becomes your partner instead of your adversary from the work that you do?
Yeah, so we actually played, I the co-founder of something called Justice League NYC that organized a lot of the protests around Eric Garner. And also in the time that I was organizing the Women's March, we were working on a bill called Raise the Age, because in New York State, 16-year-olds are automatically prosecuted as adults, and they're placed in adult facilities where they become victims of a lot of harm. But we play the inside-outside game really well. We work with electeds. We meet with them. They actually give us a lot of information. We were on calls. I believe the floor was not moving in Albany, and we got a call from some of the people that we knew from the inside that said, look, you all need to come down here right now and make some noise. And they told us who to target, so we did what's called bird dogging on social media. We put their information online and said these elected officials are not moving. And then we showed up, and then we were able to raise the age, and we did that recently. There's this Biden bill that's going, it's called America's Safety Plan. We met with the Congressional Black Caucus. We've been meeting with them. We've had off the record conversation. Sorry, I'm not saying who, but and so they let us know how to leverage power, right? And so it's not just about having these meetings, but it's also getting our own people elected. My friend Wendy Carrillo is now in the Assembly in California, and I'm able to call her around justice reform bills. And so it's asking people, look, if you're not satisfied with the system or your government, there's an opportunity for you to be in there, right? And then also set up meetings. People want to hear from you. You're the experts, right? These folks are getting into office. They're not the experts on immigration. They're not the experts on criminal. They need you who are on the ground. And so that's really what we do. We're able to access and leverage the people that are inside, and they give us information. We're able to activate on a whole other level.
Is that true for you as well?
Yeah, definitely. Probably I read the kind of worked with government officials since coming, but I'll say that the insider information does really help. Just knowing even the status of something that's trying to get passed or you're trying to kill is just crucial to knowing what the next steps are and planning ahead. Because in organizing, being proactive is so important instead of just reacting to things. It also shows a lot of power when you're able to be proactive and show the numbers for something that you can already expect is going to happen. So yeah.
So I was curious if the Welcome Water Protectors or just various nonprofits involved in shutting down that bill, when you say they have a more systemic vision, I'm curious if that also is including trying to work to demilitarize Oahu, not necessarily directly into like the sovereignty movement, which I know is like its own thing, but just to try to understand that as a very small island, that security really means having clean water over guns and weapons and tanks and bring it back. Yeah.
Thank you for that question.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think there's so many points to this, and I can go on forever on this topic, but you're absolutely right in the security aspect. So I think that's actually something that we say more than the word demilitarized, because national security, we hear that day in and day out in this country, right? And I think with Red Hill, the reason why it's such a prime organizing kind of central point is because it completely undermines that message of national security, right? What is national security when the people you claim to protect are when they're drinking junk food? That's not national security. And beyond that, I think it's demilitarization and kind of all the different ways to get there is extremely complex and involves so many different different strategies and tactics. But I'll say that the different groups involved focus a lot on, how does Red Hill contribute to the long-term organizing that is happening here on Oahu? Whether that is in regards to gender, to the economy, to food, to housing. There's so many different issues here that are also interconnected. Red Hill is just one part of it. And so I think while we try and stray away from using these big words that just like it's really overwhelming. We try to focus on very specific things. So I can give you examples. So some of the broader things we're working on is ensuring that one, that the fuel that is in the ready facility when the facility is defueled, we have to ensure that the fuel doesn't go to Gohan, to Okinawa. We don't want this in threatening the community. We want to end rip pack. We want to, ensure that the leases at Makua, et cetera, are renewed in 2029. So all these kind of pockets of resistance, whether or not, it all connects to this larger goal that everyone can agree on, it's kind of impossible also. But at the end of the day, what we want is protection of the people and the environment. And I think that's kind of a unifying thing, whether or not we can all say that we're taking towards sense.
Thank you so much to all of you. It's so inspiring. Because your work is so consequential, do you face threats sometimes and danger, and how do you deal with that? Does it empower you even more to fight more for these causes, or is it more fear as well? Like, how do you
Yeah, so I'll just speak briefly. So my work around police accountability we receive a lot of death threats. It's to the point where police officers name us. Also the NRA, when we made a statement in March from the NRA to the DOJ around Philando Castile, who was an actual NRA member and was killed by police. There were videos of myself and two other women that were made by the NRA. And so death threats came in that way. I've had speaking engagements where white supremacists have showed up and spit on me. And then because we organized the largest single-day protest, we were falsely accused of anti-Semitism. And so if you know history about movements, and I told you I'm connected to the movements of the past, anti-Semitism was weaponized to take down SNCC, which was the organizing body that was connected to Dr. King. And so with that, my mentor, Mr. Belafonte, had talked about being blacklisted when he used to work with Dr. King, and he was called a communist. And so that meant they didn't receive money, he didn't receive any shows anymore, he was a big celebrity. So when we were accused of anti-Semitism, the death threats were from around the world. I was pregnant. My social media, people were telling me that they're going to carve out my baby from my stomach. They were using words like NIGGR. I no longer got speaking engagements. My organization suffered. I didn't get paid for a year in order to pay my employees. And then I actually leaned into the controversy, even though I was falsely accused. I had listening sessions with the Jewish community in order to hear their concerns, because I wanted to grow as a moral leader. I wanted to learn. But many people don't know I did that for 2 years, even in a very tough time when it was my first pregnancy at 40. But the way I stay grounded is by praying. I'm extremely spiritual. And I feel like if I hadn't made such a big impact, they really wouldn't care how I was. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, it's been hard, but I'm just happy to be here right now with all of you and share that story because it was very challenging.
As a fellow organizer, I believe in organizing, but I find that most people don't know what it is and don't want to invest in it because it's long term. How have you seen the change in the landscape recently in an understanding of the power of organizing? I mean, for many folks, it seemed like Stacey Abrams and Georgia was the first time that in a generation maybe that they had exposure to, yeah, this shit takes 10 years. And so, how do we change that so that folks understand that it requires funding and a long-term investment?
Yeah, we can do a quick show on that because I fully understand it. And I'm speaking from someone who's also actually really new to organizing. Most of the things I've learned about organizing is being a believer, and the structure of labor organizing, which is in itself extremely, very thorough, structured process that takes a lot of time. I think it comes down to like long-term versus short-term goals, and having very clear definitions of what your strategy and tactics are. Really talk to folks and kind of gauging which part of the movement you want to be invested in, and what are your skills, how do you want to get involved. I think it's very clear we emphasize that this change that you want to see is not going to happen if you don't take action to do this and this isn't going to happen in a blink of an eye. And so really getting that personal connection to the issue, and I speak for myself too, is a huge, I think makes a huge difference, as opposed to saying like this is this ominous issue that you just have to like try one way or another to change the minds to make like, no, this is an action that you can take right now that's concrete, that will lead to this, that will lead to this, and these are the wins that we're trying to see happen. So yeah, I think that kind of does help to a certain extent with organizing sustainably, but also saying the big thing is community care. Being there for one another, to cry, to laugh, is really huge, because knowing that it's long term, it's also having stamina and kind of all that emotional strength that can that as well. But yeah, a lot of this community care, caring for mama I know work, is rejuvenating, and just kind of finding different ways to ensure that you don't burn out.
I'll add a couple of things. So one, I'm trying to make it sexy. Like, I'm just gonna keep it real. Like, I want young people, I don't wanna be in a platform or on the podium until I'm 80. So I take it to a place where young people are being cultivated. So there are about 15 young people behind me that could actually sit here right now and tell you the same stories. Look, because I hook them with the rapid response, they want to show up to the protest, and then I'm like, hey, by the way, we're having a meeting. And then I train them up, and I give them the tools, the language, the everything that they need to know in order to feel effective. I remind them that there's a lane for them, so I'm not trying to duplicate lanes. I don't need experts in criminal justice. What I could do is I could teach you criminal justice. I can't teach you to have heart. So I grew up playing basketball, and so that's why I use a lot of basketball analogies. But I also know it's important to incentivize, and I do that with bringing in influencers, having real deep connections, and I make it sexy. I make it cool. Like, we're gonna show up here, and it's okay to wear false lashes. I tell my people, I show up sometimes with like my heels. I'm looking, like I came out of somewhere from a magazine, and I'm marching, and I'm letting people show up with their full selves and not be part of this movement that is a purist movement that says you can't wear this, you can't do that, you can't be this, because I believe that, again, it's a process, right? And what happens oftentimes is we get into these movements and we want things a certain way, we want it to look away, we want it to be pure, and we forget that it's led by people, it's not led by organizations. People make up organizations, and my biggest asset is the human asset. I can get computers, I can get the money, but I need to make people feel whole, feel seen, and feel loved doing this work.
Dora, how do you attract businesses to buy into this idea that they should commit to climate change and carbon reduction?
It's kind of hard at the beginning, I think.
Yeah.
Kind of. So from last year, because COVID, okay, we recorded a lot of the YouTube films, and I started to tell people how it works, and especially the certain terms, because the terms they probably don't know what it means. So I start from there. So I made probably 8 films. Then I became famous. I don't know why. Yeah, you have like I don't know. I have like 5,000 followers right now. I don't know why.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's how, yeah. So that's how, we don't have marketing people, as I told, yeah. And people just call in and they fill out our KYC, then want to meet with us. But because we don't have I figure out this is the best way to set up the first meeting, not in person. I do it intentionally because you waste a lot of time. Sometimes they just wanna get your knowledge. Okay, so I figure out that there's a process of my business is that okay, we do the first meeting online. Then I will come on the next page is what we do. We want the first one, we need the assessment. We charge you what kind of amount of money. So I want to make sure this customer is serious about climate change. Not just looking around for some free information. So I did that. So I do scare a lot of people away. But still. Okay, I learned from that, okay? But I think it turned out quite well. So at this moment. So that's a way, also I do a lot of speech right now. And not the media, also the Harvard Review, they also invite me to do the speech, yes. So. Yeah, I kind of try to do everything. But I definitely need to try to hire marketing people.
Get them to volunteer.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I kind of want to share one of my experience about the previous question. I remember because I was represent on behalf of our government to participating in climate change issues in Southern America. And as you know, Taiwan is not a UN member. So when I was there, I did try really hard to not make it notable and hide because I sit on the very last table and I always put my head down, But because it's an international conference, so when I entered the cafeteria the second morning, and I bumped into one of the colleagues. We already know each other for a long time, so we just say hello. Then, the last 2 hours, I was forced to leave this conference room, and I left all my stuff on the table. I ran out and hide. Yeah, and there's 2 security guards looking for me in the hotel. I hide in the hotel room. I cannot get out. And they, the lady, she's just looking for us, and she shouted, "Where are your other candidates?" Then we hide for 3 hours. I left all my stuff there.
Why were you hiding, Laura?
Actually, as I mentioned, we are not a UN member, but I show up at the conference, and it's about climate change. Nothing about So they said we are not supposed to show up there.
With Taiwanese.
Yes, and when the lady come to me, she said, "Who are you?" I said, "Oh, I am da." Then she said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Oh, the kind of I'm a consultant of that country." That's what I said. I said, So she starts speaking Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. All right. And then, okay, what are you originally from? Then I show my passport. Then immediately she called up security guards. Too strong man. No, so short, I was afraid that time. Then I left all my stuff there and I ran to the hotel room. And I never, after that, then I never, I wanted to register another conference, but I got blocked out on the internet until now. Yeah, that's.
We're glad you're here.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Spanish. Really appreciate.
If I could just add the piece around the anti-Semitism, because I think it's important to share, is that the movement didn't show up for us women. And that was difficult. And so now we have people running the organization we founded and we have no connection to it. And it's a challenge because you gave your all, you grounded it, you gave all your relationships to bring on 800 partners, you gave everything, and you don't now have a relationship. And what we just recently learned, right, we knew that it wasn't us, that this had to be calculated and somebody else was doing this, is we were contacted by somebody from the New York Times letting us know that there was a report that had been embargoed from the Russian intelligence agency that had actually targeted myself, Tamika, and Linda, because they were trying to disrupt American democracy, and they started with Hillary Clinton, and that's why those emails had been let out, and everybody was like, oh, Hillary Clinton is gonna be a good president for us, right? And so that's what they do to women, specifically women who are making impact in this world, and they targeted us. And again, a lot of the people that we had actually brought in to organize with us turned their back on us. And all they had to do was show up. And so one thing that we need to do is we need to stand in radical solidarity with one another by any means, because there's going to be forces that are going to try to tear up your movement, try to tear you apart, and that's how they start, is by creating these rumors, and we start believing them, we start saying them, and we don't show up for one another. And so hopefully the article will come out, but I mean, for the last 3 to 4 years, or since 2018 is when they planted that lie. And we've been, it's like I said, it was very hard, and now we have people who have completely disowned us because they chose to believe something that wasn't true.
Okay, anyone have a question? Great. We are out of time, and thank you for your inspiring talk, and thank you everyone.